Hi, welcome to Big Daddy Bakes. I'm Big Daddy, and today we're going to be making Bauernbrot. Bauernbrot is a German farmer's bread, and in fact the name literally translates to farmer's bread. It's a dense rye bread that has a really great taste from all the caraway seeds and the rye flour that's in it. It's also very easy to make, and I'm going to show you how to do it today. So let's get to it, and I'll show you how to do it. What you will need for this recipe is 3/4 cup of bread flour, and in the bread flour I've added half a teaspoon of instant yeast. You also need 3/4 cup of rye flour, 3 tablespoons of honey, 1.5 cups of lukewarm water. For the flour mixture, you're going to need 2.5 cups of bread flour, 2 tablespoons of caraway seeds, 2 teaspoons of salt, which I have in this dish as well, half a teaspoon of instant yeast, a tablespoon of vegetable oil, and you're going to need some vegetable spray or a little more oil later to grease the bowl, and then cornmeal. We're just going to use this on the bottom of the bread. To start this recipe, we're going to make the starter. So we're going to put our flour and yeast into a little bigger bowl, our rye flour, and I'm just going to stir those together. Our instant yeast is in there as well. I'm going to put in the yeast, not yeast, that was honey, and I'm going to add the 1.5 cups of water. And I had this water temped. It was right at around 105 degrees. This is so the yeast will activate and start. Now this is going to be a loose mixture. As you can see, I'm using my whisk and just kind of stirring it, and it's very, very loose. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to cover this, let it sit for 10 minutes, and you should start to see some bubbles on the top once it's there. So I will be back in 10 minutes to show you what it looks like. So as you can see, this got bubbly and has a little bit of air, so you know that the yeast has been activated. So to continue on with the recipe, I put my 3 cups of flour in the bowl of my stand mixer. I'm also going to add half a teaspoon of yeast, the caraway seeds and the salt, and the oil. And I am going to just whisk this all together. And then I am going to pour in this mixture just over the top. Now, I'm just going to let this sit for about 2 to 3 hours, maybe 4. And then we will start kneading. This is going to add a lot of flavor to the mixture by doing it this way. So I will be back in about 3 hours. Alright, so the dough has been sitting there for about 3 hours, and I did make a mistake when I made this. So what I did was, I was supposed to put the liquid on the bottom and the flour on the top, and I didn't do that. So I just gently folded the flour over it. So you got to mix in there. This is puffy. The yeast has been rising all that time, and it's been making a lot of flavor. So now we're going to start kneading. So this is going to need to be kneaded for about 10 minutes. Then at the end of the 10 minutes, we're going to stop, let it rest for about 10 minutes, and then knead it for 5 more minutes in order to get the gluten to build the way we want it. So I will be back at the end of 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. I'm going to take this off of the hook and just kind of push it down in the bowl. And we're going to let this rest for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and knead for 5 more minutes. It is getting to where it needs to be. It's elastic, but not quite there. It's a little bit sticky, which is fine. That's the way you want it to be. Okay, so the dough has sit here for about 5 minutes. Well, 10 minutes. And then I'm going to let this run for about 5 more minutes. Alright, so our dough has kneaded for 5 more minutes, and it's very smooth and elastic. So what I'm going to do is take the dough out, and I have a bowl here that I've sprayed with some oil spray. I'm just going to roll it over, and I'm going to let this rise till it's double in volume, which will take about an hour to an hour and a half. And then once that is done, we're going to punch down the dough. We're going to let it rise again for 45 minutes. Alright, so our dough has risen. It took about an hour, a little more than an hour. I punched it down and let it rise, and it's about 45 minutes later. So now we're going to shape it. So I'm going to punch the dough down, and I'm going to bring it in. What I'm doing is I'm just going to create a big ball, like so. And then I'm going to roll it in on itself. Right, and make a nice firm ball. Right, so it's supposed to be rustic looking, so don't look for perfection. And then I'm going to put some cornmeal onto the baking tray. I'm going to just press that down. I'm going to let this rise for 45 more minutes, and I will be back. Right, so our bread has risen, and it is ready to go into the oven. So what I'm going to do is take a fresh, clean razor blade, and I'm going to slash it 3 times across the top, about 1/4 of an inch down, and then 3 times the other way. The reason to do this is twofold. One, you want to let the excess gas expand through where you want it to do, so you do it through the scores. Plus, with the oven spring, it's going to kind of open up and have a really pretty design. So with that, I have my oven at 425 degrees, and I'm going to bake this for 15 minutes and then turn down the oven to 400 degrees. And I'm going to let it cook for about 30-35 minutes more, and then I'll check the temperature. Here is our bread after it comes out of the oven. It's well baked, has a very crispy crust, and the inside is lovely. One thing that I did neglect to say was when I put this into the oven, I actually threw a cup of water into a pan that I had heating into the oven so it would get the steam on it. And it's just a beautiful loaf. A little weird because I didn't get it quite round, but it's still going to taste just as good. Thank you so much for joining us today on Big Daddy Bakes. This farmer's bread is just delicious, and you really should try it for yourself. It takes a long time because of all the kneading and waiting time, but it's worth the effort. You're going to get a really, really delicious loaf of bread, and you can always go and put some cream cheese and some blocks on it and maybe a few capers, and you're really going to enjoy the flavor of this bread with that. Also, this is our 21st episode, so I'm saying happy 21st to the show. And please like and subscribe, and also share with a friend. Thank you so much. And please let